In a small, quiet town surrounded by green hills and open fields, there lived a teenage girl who had an unbreakable bond with horses. Her name was Emily, and she was just 16 years old. From as far back as she could remember, Emily's happiest moments were spent on horseback. She loved the feeling of freedom that came with riding through wide-open pastures, the wind brushing against her face, and the rhythmic sound of hooves hitting the ground beneath her. Horses weren't just animals to her. They were her escape, her joy, and her best friends. Emily grew up on a modest ranch where her family kept a few horses. Her favorite among them was Daisy, a gentle mare with soft brown eyes and a coat that gleamed like gold under the sun. Together, they explored every corner of their land, from the tall grass near the river to the wildflower meadows at the edge of the property. Every ride felt like an adventure, and Emily couldn't imagine life without it. But one icy winter morning, everything changed in an instant. That day started like any other. Emily woke up early, got ready for school, and drove her old car down the winding country roads. The weather was bad. Snow had fallen overnight, and patches of ice made the roads slippery. As she approached an intersection, disaster struck. A speeding truck skidded out of control and slammed into her car. The impact was devastating. When Emily woke up in the hospital days later, she learned the heartbreaking truth. The accident had left her paralyzed from the waist down. No matter how hard doctors tried, she would never walk again, or so they said. For someone whose whole world revolved around movement and independence, this news shattered her completely. The thought of never being able to ride a horse again broke something inside her that seemed impossible to fix. The months that followed were some of the hardest of Emily's life. Adjusting to life in a wheelchair wasn't easy. Simple things she used to take for granted, like getting dressed or moving around the house, now required effort and help from others. Her once bright smile faded, replaced by a deep sadness that weighed heavily on her heart. Even visits from friends and family didn't bring much comfort. They'd try to cheer her up, but Emily often found herself withdrawing, lost in memories of happier times when she was free to gallop across fields with Daisy. Her parents did everything they could think of to lift her spirits. They signed her up for physical therapy sessions, hoping it might speed up her recovery. They encouraged her to join art classes, thinking creativity might be a new outlet for her emotions. But nothing seemed to work. Emily's spark, the energy, and passion that defined her, was gone. It felt like a part of her had died along with her ability to ride. Then one day, a local trainer who worked with rescue horses came to visit. This woman ran a nearby equestrian center where she trained wild mustangs rescued from public lands. These horses were known for their untamed nature and fierce independence. Among them was a stunning black stallion with piercing blue eyes. He was called Midnight because of his sleek dark coat and mysterious aura. Despite his beauty, Midnight had earned a reputation for being unpredictable and difficult to handle. No one could tame him, and many had given up trying. The trainer suggested an idea that sounded almost crazy: pairing Emily with Midnight. At first, everyone thought it was too risky. How could a paralyzed girl possibly connect with such a wild animal? But the trainer saw something in both of them: a shared determination and resilience. She believed that maybe, just maybe, they could find strength in each other. Emily was hesitant at first. The idea of working with a wild stallion felt overwhelming, especially since she hadn't been near a horse since the accident. Still, curiosity got the better of her. Maybe spending time around horses again, even if she couldn't ride, would help ease the ache in her heart. So she agreed to give it a try. For weeks, Emily simply sat beside Midnight's paddock, watching him run and play. She talked to him softly, sharing bits of her story: the accident, her fears, her longing to ride again. To her surprise, Midnight began responding. Instead of ignoring her or running away, he'd stop mid-gallop and listen, his ears twitching as if he understood every word. Slowly, a connection formed between them. It wasn't forced or rushed. It happened naturally, like two souls recognizing each other. Encouraged by this progress, Emily decided to push further. With the help of the trainer, she designed a special saddle system that allowed her to sit securely on Midnight, despite her condition. Training sessions became longer and more focused. Emily learned to guide him using subtle hand signals and shifts in weight. Each session brought them closer together, building trust and understanding. One afternoon, after months of practice, Emily finally climbed onto Midnight's back for the first time since the accident. Sitting high above the ground, she felt a rush of emotions, fear, excitement, and hope all mixed into one. Midnight stood still beneath her, calm and steady, as if he knew how important this moment was. Together they took their first steps, slow and cautious but full of promise. This marked the beginning of a journey neither Emily nor Midnight could have imagined. Their partnership wasn't just about learning to ride again. It was about rediscovering what it meant to live fully, even in the face of unimaginable challenges. And little did they know their story was only just beginning. As Emily continued to spend time with Midnight, their bond deepened in ways no one could have predicted. At first, it was just small moments, Midnight pausing to look at her when she spoke, his ears twitching as if he were listening intently. But soon those small moments grew into something much bigger. It wasn't just about training or riding anymore. It was about connection. Something unspoken passed between them, a kind of understanding that went beyond words. Every day, Emily would wheel herself out to the paddock where Midnight stayed. She'd sit there quietly, sometimes for hours, talking to him about everything and nothing. She told him about her dreams before the accident, the competitions she wanted to enter, the places she hoped to travel, and how those dreams had been shattered. She talked about her fears too. The fear of never being able to ride again, the fear of being seen as weak or broken. And Midnight listened. He didn't judge her or turn away. Instead, he seemed to meet her halfway, offering his presence as a kind of silent support. One afternoon, after weeks of sitting by the fence, Emily decided to step things up. With the help of the trainer, she worked on building trust with Midnight in new ways. They started with simple exercises like feeding him carrots from her hand or brushing his sleek black coat. Each interaction was slow and deliberate, designed to show Midnight that Emily wasn't a threat, but someone who cared about him. And slowly, Midnight began to let his guard down. The breakthrough came on a sunny spring morning. Emily had wheeled herself closer than usual, stopping just a few feet away from Midnight. She held out her hand, palm flat, offering him a piece of apple. For a moment he hesitated, his blue eyes locked onto hers. Then, almost cautiously, he stretched his neck forward and took the treat from her hand. The touch of his velvety nose against her skin sent a shiver of excitement through Emily. It was the first real sign that Midnight trusted her. From that day on, their progress accelerated. Emily spent countless hours learning how to communicate with Midnight without words. She discovered that even the smallest movements, a flick of her wrist, a shift in her posture, could guide him. Midnight, in turn, responded with surprising sensitivity. He learned to follow her cues, moving when she asked him to, stopping when she needed him to. It was as if they were speaking a language only they understood. But the biggest challenge still lay ahead, getting Emily back on a horse. After months of preparation, the trainer helped design a special saddle system tailored to Emily's needs. It was sturdy yet flexible, designed to keep her secure while allowing her to maintain control. The first time Emily saw it, her heart raced with a mix of excitement and fear. Could she really do this? Could she ride again? The answer came on, a crisp autumn afternoon. Emily wheeled herself into the arena, her hands trembling slightly as she gripped the armrests of her chair. The trainer stood nearby, ready to assist, while Midnight waited patiently beside them. His dark coat gleamed in the sunlight, and his blue eyes sparkled with a quiet confidence that calmed Emily's nerves. Taking a deep breath, she nodded to the trainer, signaling she was ready. With careful precision, the trainer helped Emily transfer from her wheelchair to Midnight's back. The process was slow and deliberate, each movement calculated to ensure her safety. When Emily finally settled into the saddle, a wave of emotions washed over her. She felt vulnerable yet exhilarated, scared yet hopeful. For the first time in, What felt like forever, she was sitting on a horse again. At first, Midnight moved cautiously, taking tiny steps as if testing the waters. Emily held on tightly, her fingers gripping the reins, her body tense with anticipation. But as they moved forward, something incredible happened. Midnight's strides became smoother, more confident. He seemed to sense Emily's nervousness and responded by staying calm and steady. Slowly, Emily began to relax, letting go of some of the tension she'd been holding on to. They didn't go far that day, just a few laps around the arena. But it was enough. By the time they finished, Emily's cheeks were flushed with excitement, and tears glistened in her eyes. She leaned forward, wrapping her arms around Midnight's neck in a tight hug. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. Midnight nuzzled her gently, as if to say, "You're welcome." Word of Emily and Midnight's partnership spread quickly through the community. People couldn't believe what they were seeing. A paralyzed girl riding a wild stallion who had once been considered untamable. Their story inspired awe and admiration, and soon, invitations began pouring in from local equestrian events. Organizers wanted Emily and Midnight to perform in exhibitions, showcasing their incredible journey to larger audiences. At first, Emily hesitated. Performing in front of crowds wasn't something she'd ever imagined doing, especially not after the accident. What if something went wrong? What if Midnight got spooked or refused to cooperate? The thought of failing in front of hundreds of people terrified her. But then she remembered all the hard work they'd put in together, the countless hours of training, the trust they'd built, the milestones they'd achieved. If anyone could face this challenge, it was them. With renewed determination, Emily threw herself into preparing for the upcoming exhibition. She practiced tirelessly, refining her technique and strengthening her bond with Midnight. The trainer offered guidance and encouragement, reminding Emily to focus on the connection they shared rather than the pressure of performing. "This isn't about impressing anyone," the trainer said. "It's about showing the world what you two can do when you believe in each other." As the big day approached, Emily's nerves returned. She lay awake the night before, staring at the ceiling and replaying every possible scenario in her mind. Would Midnight behave during the performance? Would the crowd understand the significance of what they were witnessing? Doubts swirled in her head, making it hard to sleep. But then she thought about Midnight, the way he always seemed to know exactly what she needed, the way he carried himself with such dignity and strength. He wasn't just a horse. He was her partner, her ally, her friend. Together they had already overcome so much. Whatever happened tomorrow, Emily knew they would face it side by side. When morning arrived, Emily woke up feeling a strange mix of fear and excitement. Today was the day she and Midnight would step into the spotlight, sharing their story with the world. As she got dressed and prepared to leave for the arena, she glanced out the window and saw Midnight standing proudly in the paddock, his mane catching the light of the rising sun. In that moment, all her doubts melted away. She smiled softly, knowing that no matter what happened next, they were ready. What neither Emily nor Midnight realized was that this performance would become more than just a demonstration of skill or resilience. It would be a moment that touched hearts, brought tears to eyes, and reminded everyone watching of the power of perseverance, trust, and love. And little did they know, Midnight had one final surprise in store, a gesture so profound it would leave the entire audience speechless. The day of the exhibition arrived and the air buzzed with anticipation. The arena was packed with people, families, friends, strangers, all eager to see what this young girl and her wild stallion could do. Emily felt a strange mix of emotions as she prepared for her performance. Her heart raced with nerves, but there was also a flicker of excitement deep inside. This wasn't just another training session. It was a chance to share their journey with the world. She wanted to show everyone that even when life knocks you down, you can still find a way to rise. As Emily wheeled herself toward the arena entrance, she could hear the murmur of the crowd growing louder. Volunteers were waiting to help her transfer from her wheelchair onto Midnight's back. The trainer stood nearby, giving her one last pep talk. "You've got this. she said firmly, her voice steady and reassuring. Just focus on Midnight, he knows exactly what to do. Emily nodded, taking a deep breath to steady herself. She glanced over at Midnight, who stood calmly beside her, his dark coat gleaming under the bright lights. His blue eyes seemed to lock onto hers, and in that moment all her fears melted away. If Midnight believed in her, then she could believe in herself too. When it was time, the volunteers helped Emily move from her wheelchair to the specially designed saddle on Midnight's back. Every movement was careful and precise, ensuring she was secure and comfortable. Once she was settled, Emily took a moment to adjust her grip on the reins and settle into position. Midnight shifted slightly beneath her, his powerful muscles rippling as he prepared to move. Emily leaned forward slightly, whispering softly into his ear. "Let's do this," she murmured, her voice barely audible above the hum of the crowd. The gate opened, and they stepped into the arena. For a brief second, everything went quiet. Hundreds of pairs of eyes turned to watch them, and the weight of those gazes pressed down on Emily. But then Midnight began to walk, his strides smooth and confident, and Emily focused on the rhythm of his movements. One step, then another. The sound of his hooves hitting the ground echoed through the arena, grounding her in the present moment. Slowly, the tension in her body eased, replaced by a sense of calm determination. Their routine started simply enough. Midnight walked in wide circles around the arena, responding perfectly to Emily's subtle cues. She guided him with gentle tugs on the reins and shifts in her posture, marveling at how effortlessly he followed her lead. The audience watched in silence, completely captivated by the sight before them. Here was a girl who had been told she would never ride again, now sitting tall and proud atop a horse that had once been considered untamable. It was a story straight out of a dream. As they continued, Emily pushed herself to try more challenging maneuvers. With each step, Midnight proved himself to be not just strong but incredibly intelligent. He responded to every signal she gave him, turning sharply when asked, stopping abruptly when needed, and pacing himself according to her commands. The crowd erupted into applause after each successful move, their cheers echoing across the arena, like waves crashing against the shore. Emily couldn't help but smile, feeling a surge of pride swelling in her chest. They were doing it. They were really doing it. But the most magical part of their performance was yet to come. About halfway through the routine, something unexpected happened. Midnight suddenly stopped moving. His head lowered slightly, and he turned to look at Emily, his piercing blue eyes locking onto hers. Time seemed to stand still as they stared at each other, the noise of the crowd fading into the background. Then, without any prompting or command, Midnight did something no one saw coming. He knelt. Right there in the middle of the arena, the mighty stallion bent his front legs and lowered himself gracefully to the ground. It was a gesture so deliberate, so full of meaning that it left everyone watching speechless. Tears welled up in Emily's eyes as she realized what Midnight was doing. He wasn't just kneeling for show, he was making sure she could get off safely. In that moment, it was as if he understood her vulnerability, her need for support, and he was offering it willingly. The crowd erupted into thunderous applause, many people rising to their feet in awe. Some wiped tears from their eyes, while others clapped wildly, unable to contain their emotions. Volunteers rushed forward to help Emily slide off Midnight's back and return to her wheelchair, but she paused for a moment, leaning down to hug his neck tightly. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice trembling with gratitude. Midnight nuzzled her gently, his warm breath brushing against her cheek. Emily sat back in her wheelchair, overwhelmed by the flood of emotions rushing through her. Pride, joy, relief. It all mingled together, leaving her breathless. As she looked out at the cheering crowd, she realized that this moment wasn't just about her and Midnight anymore. It was about everyone watching, the parents holding their children close, the teenagers wiping away tears, the elderly couples gripping each other's hands. Their story had touched something deep within them, reminding them of the resilience of the human spirit and the incredible bonds we can form with animals. After the performance, Emily and Midnight stayed in the arena for a little while longer, soaking in the energy of the crowd. People lined up to meet them, shaking Emily's hand and patting Midnight's neck. Strangers shared their own stories of struggle and triumph, telling her how much her courage had inspired them. Emily listened quietly, nodding and smiling, grateful for the connection she felt with these people. For the first time in a long time, she didn't feel alone. She felt seen, understood, and celebrated. That night, as Emily lay in bed replaying the events of the day in her mind, she thought about how far she and Midnight had come. From the early days of sitting quietly by the paddock to performing in front of hundreds of people, their journey had been nothing short of extraordinary. And yet, Emily knew this was only the beginning. There were still challenges ahead, still fears to face, but she also knew that she wouldn't have to face them alone. Midnight would always be by her side, just as he had been today. What made their bond so special wasn't just the fact that they had overcome adversity together. It was the unspoken understanding between them, the way they communicated without words, the way they supported each other through thick and thin. Midnight wasn't just a horse, he was a symbol of hope, strength, and unconditional love. And Emily wasn't just a rider. She was proof that even in the darkest moments there is light waiting to be found. As sleep finally claimed her, Emily drifted off with a smile on her face, knowing that tomorrow held endless possibilities. Together, she and Midnight had shown the world that anything was possible if you dared to believe. The days following the exhibition were a whirlwind of emotions for Emily. The overwhelming support from the crowd had left her feeling both humbled and empowered. For the first time in years, she felt like she was truly being seen, not as the girl who couldn't walk, but as someone who had defied the odds alongside her loyal companion Midnight. People began reaching out to her, sharing their own stories of struggle and resilience. Some were parents of children with disabilities, looking for hope. Others were riders who had faced setbacks in their equestrian journeys. Each message reminded Emily that her story wasn't just hers anymore. It belonged to everyone who found inspiration in it. But even as the world celebrated her triumph, Emily knew the road ahead wouldn't always be easy. Life wasn't suddenly perfect just because one performance had gone well. There were still bad days, days when the frustration of being paralyzed bubbled to the surface, when simple tasks felt impossible, or when self-doubt crept back in. Yet, something inside her had shifted. That moment in the arena, when Midnight knelt before her, had changed everything. It wasn't just about riding again. It was about realizing she was stronger than she thought. And she carried that realization with her every single day. Midnight, too, seemed different after the event. He wasn't the wild stallion he'd once been, the one who bucked and reared whenever someone came near him. Instead, he exuded a quiet confidence, almost as if he understood the impact they'd made together. Their bond deepened further during this time. Training sessions became less about mastering new skills and more about connecting on a deeper level. Emily spent hours simply sitting beside him, stroking his mane, and talking about her dreams for the future. She told him about her desire to inspire others, to show people that even when life feels broken, there's always a way to piece it back together. Midnight listened intently, his ears flicking forward as if hanging on her every word. Word of their performance spread far beyond the local community. Soon, reporters started calling, asking to interview Emily and write articles about her journey. At first, she hesitated. The idea of being in the spotlight made her uncomfortable. She didn't want people to think she was seeking attention or trying to make herself famous. But then she remembered why she had agreed to participate in the exhibition in the first place, to inspire others. If sharing her story could help even one person feel less alone, then it was worth stepping outside her comfort zone. Her first interview took place in the barn where Midnight lived. Cameras rolled as Emily sat in her wheelchair beside him, speaking candidly about the accident, her recovery, and how Midnight had helped her rediscover her strength. When asked what she hoped people would take away from her story, she smiled softly and said, "I want them to know that no matter how hard things get, you can always find a reason to keep going. Sometimes all it takes is believing in yourself. And maybe having someone or something who believes in you too. The response to the interview was overwhelming. Messages poured in from all over the country, thanking Emily for her honesty and bravery. Many shared their own struggles, some physical, some emotional, and explained how her story gave them hope. One letter stood out to Emily in particular. It was from a young boy named Alex, who had recently lost the use of his legs in a car accident. His mother wrote to say that watching Emily ride Midnight had given Alex the courage to try adaptive sports programs at his local gym. "You've shown him that he can still chase his dreams," the letter read. "Thank you for being his hero." Reading those words brought tears to Emily's eyes. She hadn't set out to be anyone's hero. She was just trying to navigate her own challenges. But now she realized that her journey had become a beacon of light for others. That realization filled her with a sense of purpose she hadn't felt before. Maybe this was her calling, to use her experience to help others find strength in their darkest moments. With renewed determination, Emily decided to expand her efforts. She began working closely with organizations that provided adaptive riding programs for people with disabilities. These programs used specially designed equipment and trained horses to help participants regain confidence and independence. Emily volunteered as a mentor, spending hours each week teaching newcomers how to connect with their horses and overcome their fears. Watching others experience the same joy she had found with Midnight filled her with immense satisfaction. One of her favorite students was a teenage girl named Lily, who had cerebral palsy. Like Emily, Lily had grown up loving horses but assumed she'd never be able to ride again after her diagnosis. When she first arrived at the program, she was hesitant, unsure if she could trust herself or the horse to do what needed to be done. But Emily saw something in Lily, a spark of determination hidden beneath layers of doubt. Over weeks of practice, Emily worked patiently with her, showing her how to communicate with her horse and build trust. By the end of their sessions, Lily was riding independently, her face glowing with pride and accomplishment. Seeing Lily succeed reignited Emily's passion for helping others. She traveled to nearby towns, giving talks at schools and community centers about resilience, adaptability, and the power of human-animal bonds. Her presentations were heartfelt and relatable, filled with personal anecdotes and lessons she'd learned along the way. Audiences hung on her every word, inspired by her authenticity and courage. After each talk, lines formed as people waited to thank her or ask questions. Some even brought their own horses, hoping Emily might offer advice on training techniques or building trust. Through it all, Midnight remained by her side, a constant source of stability and encouragement. Whether they were performing in exhibitions, visiting therapy programs, or simply spending quiet moments together, he was always there, steadfast and loyal. Emily often joked that Midnight was her co-presenter, earning laughter and applause whenever he trotted into view. His presence added an extra layer of magic to everything they did, reminding people that sometimes the most unlikely partnerships can lead to the greatest miracles. As months turned into years, Emily's influence continued to grow. She became a national advocate for adaptive riding programs, lobbying for increased funding and accessibility. Her story appeared in magazines, newspapers, and documentaries, reaching audiences across the globe. Yet despite her growing fame, Emily stayed grounded. She never forgot where she came from, the small town surrounded by rolling hills, the family ranch where Daisy still roamed freely, and the paddock where she'd first met Midnight. Looking back, Emily marveled at how much had changed since that fateful winter morning. What had started as a devastating loss had transformed into a journey of healing, growth, and purpose. She had discovered strength she never knew she possessed and forged connections that would last a lifetime. Most importantly, she had learned that true strength doesn't come from avoiding pain, it comes from facing it head-on with courage and grace. And through it all, Midnight had been her rock. He wasn't just a horse, he was a symbol of hope, resilience, and unconditional love. Together they had proven that even in the face of unimaginable challenges, there is always a way forward. as long as you have faith in yourself and the support of those who believe in you. For Emily, the future was bright. She didn't know exactly what lay ahead, but she knew one thing for certain. Whatever came next, she and Midnight would face it together. As Emily's journey continued, her bond with Midnight only grew stronger. They weren't just rider and horse anymore. They were a team, a partnership built on trust, resilience, and an unspoken understanding that transcended words. Together, they traveled to different towns and cities, participating in events designed to raise awareness about adaptive riding programs. These events brought them face to face with people from all walks of life, some battling physical disabilities, others struggling with emotional scars, but each person carried a shared desire to find hope in their darkest moments. One particular event stands out vividly in Emily's memory. It was held at a sprawling equestrian center nestled in the heart of a bustling city. The facility had been transformed into a vibrant hub of activity, filled with stalls showcasing adaptive riding gear, workshops led by experts, and demonstrations featuring riders like Emily, who had overcome incredible odds. Hundreds of attendees gathered, eager to learn and be inspired. For many, it was their first time seeing adaptive riding in action, and Emily knew this was an opportunity to show them what was possible. When it was her turn to perform, the arena fell silent as she wheeled herself in, Midnight walking proudly beside her. The crowd watched intently as volunteers helped her transfer from her wheelchair onto his back. Once settled, Emily took a deep breath, letting the familiar rhythm of Midnight's movements calm her nerves. As they began their routine, the audience seemed to hold its collective breath. Every stride Midnight took was deliberate, every movement synchronized perfectly with Emily's cues. Their connection was palpable, almost electric, leaving spectators awestruck. But it wasn't just their technical skill that captivated the crowd, it was the emotion behind it. Watching Emily guide Midnight with such confidence, despite her physical limitations, reminded everyone of the power of perseverance. When Midnight performed his signature kneel at the end of the routine, lowering himself so Emily could return to her wheelchair, the entire arena erupted into applause. People stood up, clapping and cheering, tears streaming down their faces. It was clear that this moment meant something profound, not just for Emily and Midnight, but for everyone watching. Afterward, Emily stayed behind to meet the attendees. Long lines formed as people waited patiently to speak with her, share their stories, or simply thank her for inspiring them. One woman approached with her teenage daughter, who used crutches to walk. "My daughter has been afraid to try anything new since her injury," the mother explained, her voice trembling with emotion. "But after seeing you today, she wants to sign up for riding lessons. Thank you for showing her that she can still dream." Moments like these fueled Emily's determination to keep pushing forward. She realized that her story wasn't just about her, it was about creating ripples of change, encouraging others to embrace their own potential. With each event, she became more confident in her ability to make a difference. And Midnight? He thrived in the spotlight, seeming to understand the impact they were having. His once wild spirit had softened, replaced by a quiet dignity that commanded respect wherever they went. Over time, Emily expanded her efforts beyond performances and speaking engagements. She collaborated with local schools to introduce students to adaptive riding programs, teaching them not only about horses but also about empathy and inclusion. She worked with hospitals and rehabilitation centers, offering motivational talks to patients recovering from injuries or illnesses. Her message was simple yet powerful. No matter how hard life gets, you are never alone. There is always someone, or something, willing to stand by you if you let them. One of her most rewarding projects involved working with veterans suffering from PTSD. Many of these men and women had returned home carrying invisible wounds, struggling to adjust to civilian life. Horses, with their intuitive nature and calming presence, proved to be ideal companions for healing. Emily partnered with a veteran named Jake, who had served overseas and come back haunted by memories he couldn't escape. At first, Jake was reluctant to participate in the program. He didn't see how spending time with a horse could possibly help him cope with the nightmares that plagued his nights. Emily understood his skepticism. She remembered feeling the same way when the trainer first suggested pairing her with Midnight. So instead of pressuring Jake, she invited him to observe a session. Sitting quietly on the sidelines, he watched as another veteran worked with a gentle mare, learning to communicate without words. Slowly, Jake began to join in, starting with small tasks like grooming the horses or leading them around the paddock. Over weeks of practice, he grew more comfortable, eventually working up the courage to ride. The transformation in Jake was remarkable. Where once there had been anger and frustration, there was now calmness and focus. Riding gave him a sense of control he hadn't felt in years, while caring for the horses provided a sense of purpose. By the end of the program, Jake credited the experience with helping him regain a piece of himself he thought he'd lost forever. "These animals," he told Emily one day, "they don't judge you. They just accept you for who you are." Hearing those words reinforced everything Emily believed about the healing power of human-animal connections. Despite the progress she made with others, Emily faced her own challenges along the way. Some days, the physical toll of her condition caught up with her, leaving her exhausted and frustrated. Other times, self-doubt crept in, whispering cruel reminders of all the things she'd lost. But whenever those moments arose, Midnight was there to remind her of how far she'd come. Whether it was nuzzling her hand affectionately or standing quietly beside her during tough days, his presence was a constant source of comfort. Midnight also played a key role in keeping Emily grounded. Despite her growing influence, she remained humble, knowing that her success wasn't hers alone. It belonged to everyone who had supported her, including Midnight. Without him, none of this would have been possible. He had taught her patience, trust, and the importance of taking things one step at a time. In return, she gave him a second chance, a life filled with love, purpose, and meaning. Years passed, and Emily's advocacy work gained national recognition. She appeared on television shows, wrote articles for major publications, and even consulted on documentaries about adaptive sports. Yet through it all, she never lost sight of why she started this journey in the first place: to inspire others to believe in themselves, no matter the obstacles they faced. Her story became a testament to the idea that true strength isn't about avoiding pain. It's about embracing it, learning from it, and using it to fuel your growth. Looking back, Emily often reflected on how much had changed since the accident. What had begun as a devastating loss had blossomed into a life full of purpose and fulfillment. She had discovered strength she never knew she possessed, forged connections that would last a lifetime, and created a legacy that extended far beyond her wildest dreams. Most importantly, she had shown countless people that they too could rise above their circumstances and find joy again. And through it all, Midnight remained by her side, a steadfast companion whose loyalty and love had carried her through the darkest days. He wasn't just a horse, he was a symbol of hope, resilience, and the unbreakable bond between humans and animals. Together, they had proven that even in the face of unimaginable challenges, there is always a way forward, as long as you have faith in yourself and the support of those who believe in you. For Emily, the future was bright. She didn't know exactly what lay ahead, but she knew one thing for certain: whatever came next, she and Midnight would face it together. Years rolled by, and Emily's journey with Midnight became the stuff of legends. Their story wasn't just a tale of triumph over adversity, it was a beacon of hope for anyone who had ever felt broken or defeated. From small-town arenas to national stages, they continued to inspire people from all walks of life. But what made their bond truly unforgettable was how it evolved over time. It wasn't static. It grew deeper, richer, and more meaningful as they faced new challenges together. By now, Midnight was no longer the wild stallion he'd once been. His fiery spirit hadn't disappeared entirely. There were still moments when he'd rear up, playfully, or gallop across the fields with youthful energy. But he had mellowed in ways that reflected the trust and love he shared with Emily. He carried himself with a quiet dignity, his piercing blue eyes always seeming to look straight into your soul. To many, Midnight wasn't just a horse. He was a symbol of resilience, a living reminder that even the wildest hearts can find peace when given the chance. For Emily, Midnight was much more than a partner. He was her confidant, her teacher, and her closest friend. On days when the weight of her advocacy work felt overwhelming, she found solace in simply being near him. Whether it was brushing his sleek black coat, feeding him apples from her hand, or sitting quietly beside him in the paddock, these small moments brought her immense comfort. Midnight seemed to understand her moods instinctively. If she was sad, he'd nuzzle her gently, his warm breath brushing against her cheek. If she was happy, he'd prance around her wheelchair, tossing his head as if to celebrate alongside her. Their connection went beyond words. It was a language of its own, spoken through touch, movement, and unspoken understanding. As Emily's influence expanded, so did her responsibilities. She traveled extensively, speaking at conferences, leading workshops, and consulting with organizations dedicated to adaptive sports programs. Her schedule was demanding, but she never complained. Every event, every interaction, and every person she met fueled her passion for making a difference. She often said that meeting others who had overcome similar struggles reminded her why she started this journey in the first place. "It's not about me," she would say humbly. "It's about showing people that they're stronger than they think." One of the most fulfilling aspects of her work was seeing others follow in her footsteps. Many of the riders she mentored went on to become advocates themselves, sharing their stories and helping others find strength in their own lives. Some even formed partnerships with horses who, like Midnight, had once been considered untamable. Watching these transformations filled Emily with pride. She loved knowing that her efforts were creating a ripple effect, inspiring others to believe in themselves and their ability to make a difference. Despite her busy schedule, Emily always made time for Midnight. No matter where her travels took her, she returned home to the familiar barnyard where their journey had begun. The sight of Midnight waiting for her, his ears perked forward and his tail swishing lazily, never failed to bring a smile to her face. Even after years of working together, there was still something magical about the way he greeted her, as if he'd been waiting all day just to see her again. Their performances became fewer as time went on, not because they couldn't handle them, but because Emily wanted to focus on mentoring others. Still, whenever they did ride together, it was as if no time had passed at all. Midnight responded to her cues with the same precision and grace he always had, while Emily guided him with the confidence of someone who had spent a lifetime learning to communicate without words. Their routines weren't flashy or complicated. They didn't need to be. What mattered most was the connection they shared, the silent dialogue between rider and horse that left audiences spellbound. One particularly memorable performance took place during an annual equestrian festival celebrating adaptive riding programs. Thousands of people gathered under a bright summer sky, eager to witness the culmination of months of hard work by riders of all ages and abilities. When Emily and Midnight entered the arena, the crowd erupted into cheers. They performed flawlessly, executing each maneuver with effortless coordination. But the highlight of their routine came at the end, when Midnight knelt before Emily, lowering himself gracefully to allow her to return to her wheelchair. The gesture, so simple yet so profound, moved everyone watching to tears. People stood and clapped, their applause echoing across the open field like thunder. Afterward, Emily stayed behind to meet attendees, signing autographs and posing for photos with fans. Children lined up eagerly, hoping to pet Midnight's velvety nose or stroke his glossy mane. Parents thanked her profusely, explaining how her story had inspired their families to pursue adaptive riding programs. One little girl, barely 6 years old, tugged shyly at Emily's sleeve and asked, "Do you think I could ride a horse someday?" Emily smiled warmly, kneeling down to meet the child's gaze. "Of course you can," she replied. "If I can do it, so can you." Moments like these reinforced everything Emily believed about the power of perseverance and community. Seeing the impact she and Midnight had on others filled her with gratitude, not just for the opportunities she'd been given, but also for the lessons she'd learned along the way. She often reflected on how far they'd come since that fateful winter, morning when her world had been turned upside down. What had started as a devastating loss had transformed into a life filled with purpose, joy, and endless possibilities. As the years went by, Emily began to think about the legacy she wanted to leave behind. She knew that her time with Midnight wouldn't last forever, horses age after all, but she wanted their story to endure long after they were gone. So she started documenting their journey, writing a book that detailed their experiences and the lessons they'd learned together. The project was challenging but deeply rewarding, allowing her to reflect on everything they'd accomplished and share their wisdom with future generations. The book, titled Riding Through the Storm, became a bestseller almost immediately upon release. Readers praised its heartfelt storytelling and practical advice, calling it a must-read for anyone facing adversity. Emily donated a portion of the proceeds to adaptive riding programs, ensuring that her success would continue to benefit others. She also launched a foundation in her name, dedicated to providing resources and support for individuals seeking healing through equine therapy. Knowing that her work would live on through these initiatives gave her immense satisfaction. Eventually, the day came when Midnight grew too old to perform regularly. His movements slowed, his once glossy coat dulled slightly, and his playful antics became less frequent. But even in his twilight years, he remained a source of inspiration. People still visited the ranch just to see him, marveling at the legendary stallion who had touched so many lives. Emily cherished every moment they spent together, savoring the quiet companionship they had built over decades. When Midnight finally passed away, surrounded by those who loved him most, Emily grieved deeply. Losing him felt like losing a part of herself. Yet even in her sorrow, she found comfort in knowing that his legacy would live on. Countless lives had been changed because of him. Not just hers, but those of everyone he had inspired indirectly. Midnight had taught her and the world that true strength lies not in avoiding pain but in embracing it, learning from it, and using it to grow. In the years that followed, Emily continued her advocacy work, carrying Midnight's memory with her wherever she went. She often spoke about him during interviews, describing him not just as a horse but as a hero who had helped her rediscover her strength. "Midnight didn't just carry me on his back," she would say. "He carried my dreams, my hopes, and my belief in myself. Without him, I wouldn't be here today." Looking back on her life, Emily felt nothing but gratitude. She had faced unimaginable challenges, but she had also experienced unimaginable joy. Through it all, she had discovered that resilience isn't about bouncing back, it's about finding new ways to move forward, even when the path ahead seems uncertain. And she had learned that sometimes the most unlikely bonds can lead to the greatest miracles. Emily's story serves as a reminder that we are capable of more than we realize. We may stumble, fall, or lose pieces of ourselves along the way, but we are never truly broken. With courage, determination, and the support of those who believe in us, we can rise again, and perhaps in doing so, inspire others to do the same.